All right, it looks like this. We were up to example 3. And if you notice here, it says you can use the FOIL method to multiply binomials that have radical expressions. Remember that the FOIL method ensures that you multiply each term of one binomial by each term of the other. So in example 3, letter A, you're going to take 3 times 5 is 15. Then you take 3 times a positive 7, radical 7, so 3 radical 7. Then I do the inner, so it's a minus 5 radical 7, minus, and what's radical 7 times radical 7 in the last position?
7.
Just 7.
Wow.
When you're done, you want to see if you can collect any like terms. Sometimes the answer is yes, you can. Sometimes the answer is no, and you're done. Well, 15 minus 7 is 8, so I can do that. And then 3 radical 7 minus 5 radical 7 is minus 2 radical 7. I'm going to pause, and I want you to do B, C, and D on your own. Get as far as you can before I start working them. I'm going to work out letter B just so that in case this is bothering you. In letter B, I take 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times negative radical 7 is negative 2 radical 7. The inner is 3 radical 5 minus. Now notice, radical 5 times radical 7 is radical 35. Nothing canceled there. The reason why in letter A, radical 7 times radical 7 is 7 is because that's radical 49, which simplifies to 7. So what I said in part A, I'm going to repeat it. I said when you do the FOIL, sometimes there'll be like terms to combine, and sometimes there aren't any like terms to combine. So in part B, I can't combine anything. That's it. Does that make sense now that you see it? Yeah. I said it, but now you have an example. Okay, letter C. I'm going to do 4 times 5 is 20, plus 4 times 4 radical 2 is 16 radical 2. So you do multiply the numbers out front, and you multiply any radicals. This is going to be 2 radical 2 times 5 is 10 radical 2 plus. Okay, now this part's tricky. 2 times 4 is 8. Yes. But what's radical 2 times radical 2? 2. Right? Because radical 4 is 2. Now I'm going to let's try and do it in one step. That's 8 times 2, which is 16. Okay? If you need the extra step, you're welcome to put it in there, but you don't have to. Now, it looks like I do have some like terms. This is going to be 36 plus 26 radical 2. Yes. All right, now try D. All right, letter D. I'm going to do the first step of FOIL. That's 6 plus 12 radical 5 plus 4 radical 5. Now, it's this last one that can be tricky for some students. 2 times 4 is 8, but radical 5 times radical 5 is 5. So 8 times 5 is 40. Now, I do happen to have some like terms. And I get 46 plus 16 radical 5. All right, what questions can I clarify for you?
How did we get
40 plus 6. Yeah, you're going to collect what are considered like terms. All right, now, conjugates. We did conjugates with radicals earlier, so we're going to revisit them. It says conjugates are expressions like radical A plus radical B and radical A minus radical B. They only differ by the sign in front of the second term. So, what I want you to do in example 4 is multiply 5 minus radical 7 times 5 plus radical 7. Go ahead and do the FOIL. And don't flip the page because we're going to add another example to the right here. So don't work ahead and then think you're going to flip because we're not going to be ready yet. 5 times 5 is 25. The outer is positive 5 radical 7. The minus 5 radical 7. And the last is minus 7. So the outer and the inner cancel. So that's 18. Now you try the next one, but don't flip because we're going to add one more to the right here. It's a different problem. So if I have 3 plus radical 2 times 3 minus radical 2, do your FOIL. So this is 9 minus 3 radical 2 plus 3 radical 2 minus 2. The outer and the inner cancel, and I get 7. All right, we are going to add an extra example here. But before we do you remember how in a fraction you can't leave a square root in the denominator? Well, now we're moving it up to, if I have like 1 plus radical 3, I'm going to multiply by the conjugate there. All right, the extra example I want you to add is this one. What if I give you 5 plus radical 3, the quantity squared? This is not 25 plus 3. We keep talking about this. If I have a times b squared, that's a squared plus b squared. But a plus b squared is not a squared plus b squared. That's not true. If I take a plus b times a plus b, that's a squared plus ab plus ab plus b squared. It has to work both ways to give you the same answer to say that it's going to work. So, but what you're thinking of is those people who keep doing this, you're thinking of the product property, where a times b squared is a squared. Oops, sorry, that's not plus. That's times, sorry. That's a time sign. So look at this. Here's what I want you to do. This is 5 plus radical 3 times 5 plus radical 3. And I'm going to pause, and I want you to FOIL this for me. So when you have a sum or difference, the quantity squared, you're going to have to expand it and then use FOIL. So I get 25 plus 5 radical 3 plus 5 radical 3 plus 3. So that's 28 plus 10 radical 3. Do you see that? Okay? All right, now you can flip it. And we're going to do the last thing, which is division. But I wanted to point out to you that if you have a sum and a difference, that makes the outer and the inner cancel. But if you have a quantity with a sum or difference squared, the outer and inner don't cancel. What?
I'm just confused how you're doing your 18, 7.
Okay, do you see these two cancel?
Yeah.
What's 25 minus 7? 18. Are you okay? Is the question more how do I get this row?
I was just confused.
Okay, because now look, down in this one, the negative 3 radical 2 and the plus 3 radical 2, those cancel. But 9 minus 2 is the 7. So you're combining like terms. Does that clear it up? Okay, cool. All right, now when you're ready, flip it over. Sometimes a denominator has a sum or difference of radicals. So the really neat thing here is we've done this before. You need to multiply by the conjugate. So then we're going to build all the skills and put them together now. So look, my denominator is square root 5 minus square root 2. So you multiply by the conjugate. Up in the numerator, I'm going to do the distributive property. Okay, it's not FOIL up in the top because it's 3 square root 2 times the sum. So watch this. 3 square root 2 times square root 5 will be 3 square root 10 plus, now what's 3 square root 2 times square root 2?
2.
It's 3 times 2, which is 6. Okay, let me say it again. 3 square root 2 times square root 2. Square root 2 times square root 2 is 2, and it's times 3. Yeah, don't lose that 3. Down in the bottom, I'm going to get 5, because square root 5 times square root 5 is 5. The outer is a plus square root 10. The inner is a minus square root 10. And the last is minus square root 2 times square root 2, so that's minus 2. So up in the top, I'm not doing anything at this point. That's 3 square root 10 plus 6 over. The square root 10s cancel, because one's a plus and one's a minus. Then I get 5 minus 2 is 3. At this point, do you remember we did this with I back in chapter 4? Yeah.
Can you slow down a bit?
Oh, sure. Have I gone too fast?
It's fine. I was just...
Okay. No problem.
So, actually, do you FOIL on the bottom row? Or
Yes, you're foiling. Yeah. So I took radical 5 times radical 5 is 5. The outer radical 5 times radical 2 is radical 10. The inner, now there's a minus sign. So radical 2 times radical 5 is minus radical 10. Radical 2 times radical 2, since there's one minus sign, is minus 2. I remember we struggled with our canceling and canceling correctly. So at this point, split it and make it 3 radical 10 over 3 plus 6 over 3, and then you're not going to make mistakes with canceling incorrectly. So this is radical 10 plus 2. All right, try the next 2 on your own. I'll try to be patient and wait for you. So you're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate. And the conjugate is just the opposite sign of the denominator. Okay, from here to here or here to here? Okay, so all I did is I took this, put it over 3 radical 10 over the 3, and the 6 over 3. I just split it.
Oh, you split it.
I split it. Then, from here to here, the 3's cancel, and 6 over 3 is 2. Good question. if you're struggling to even get started, let me show you the first step. On the first one, because the denominator is a minus, you're going to make it a plus. So you're multiplying the top and the bottom by radical 3 plus radical 5 over radical 3 plus radical 5. Right, hopefully at this point you're done with the first one. I got negative radical 21 minus radical 35. You guys getting it? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pause and let you try the last one. So you need to learn how to slow down and put all your steps in. So you have to multiply by the conjugate. Can somebody help us? What would the conjugate be on this next one?
1 plus 2.
It's not 1 plus radical 5. And we're 1 minus. It's always the conjugate is the opposite sign of the denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 1 minus square root 5. So up in the top, that's going to give me 3 minus 3 radical 5. Down in the bottom, that's 1 minus radical 5 plus radical 5 minus 5. If it helps you to put a 1 in front of the radicals, please do so. That's absolutely fine. Up in the top, I don't have anything to combine, so that's it. The radical 5's cancel, and I get negative 4. I would recommend that you just get in the habit of splitting. So that's negative 3 over 4, and the two negatives cancel. And you get negative 3 over 4 plus 3 radical 5 over 4. There was no reducing on this particular problem. All right, what questions do you have that I could clarify for you?